You're welcome to Politics HQ tonight. A very important topic on the table, the state of the nation, Nigeria's economy, leading to lots of discussion. 9 months after the beginning of the Bola Tinubu administration, state governors from Nigeria's opposition People's Democratic Party have found their voice. What was once the self-acclaimed largest party in Africa would have been expected to become the largest opposition party in Africa when they lost power. But the governors, who are the highest political office holders of the opposition party in the executive, have had what can be described as a loud silence. Now, some of them seen flocking to meet the president. I wonder what they told the president when they met him. Duoye Diri, governor of Bayelsa State, was part of the celebration at Aso Rock Villa following Mr. President Tinubu's victory at the Supreme Court. Simona Laifobara, governor of Rivers State, seems to be taking directives on affairs concerning the internal politics of his state and indeed his party, the PDP, from President Bola Tinubu. Caleb Mutfwang, governor of Plateau State, has visited President Tinubu at least 4 times, and I didn't count all, at which state he should be given a guest room at the presidential wing of Aso Rock Villa. Umoino, governor of Akwa Ibom State, wasted no time visiting Mr. President 10 days after he was sworn in. Peter Mba, governor of Enugu State, paid what was described as a Christmas homage to President Bola Tinubu at the latter's Budilon residence in Ikoyi, Lagos, where he stated his support, reiterated his support for the federal government's economic policies. How about Seyi Makinde, governor of Oyo State? I didn't bother to count how many times Seyi Makinde has interacted with President Bola Tinubu before and after the presidential election of last year. The record of the G5 governors is in the public domain and is well documented. Well, the PDP governors, after their meeting this week, claim that Nigeria is heading towards an economic collapse similar to that of Venezuela. They blame the APC-led federal government's policies for skyrocketing the living costs and economic turmoil. However, the government kicked back and is dismissing these claims as scaremongering and points to their own efforts to stabilize the economy. Now, I wonder what these PDP governors told Mr. President when they visited him. The question is Nigeria facing a Venezuela-like scenario, or is this simply a political rhetoric ahead of future elections? Is Nigeria on the brink of an economic crisis? Our guest tonight, Joseph Odey, Director General of the United APC Youth, Professor Ahmed Adamu, member of the People's Democratic Party, and we have Basil Abia, co-founder of Verif. Gentlemen, it's good to have you on the program tonight. What do you make
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, what do you make, gentlemen, of the fact that the governors of the People's Democratic Party have found their voice, and 9 months after the election of the president, they're painting a grim economic future for Nigeria? Do you believe their comparison with Venezuela is justified? Let me start with you, Basil.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'll go straight to the economics of the situation. The Nigerian economic situation is very dire. The numbers, as with a lot of people, of course, poses that the situation is really dire. I'll start with inflation. As we do know, headline inflation is about 28.98%, and the last time it was this high was around 1996 during the Sani Abacha dictatorship. So that already tells you just how bad things are. But food inflation is super high, 33.93%. There is a current food shortage problem right now in markets. Generally around this time, you expect that key groceries like tomatoes should be cheaper than normal because this is the season where you're supposed to get the prices lower. But the prices are very high. Last that I checked, a bag of tomatoes now go for about 25,000 naira. When generally this time last year or 2 years ago, it would be going for 4,000, 5,000, or even lower. I can go on and on about the numbers, but the situation is that power supply has gone to its lowest in the last 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. The numbers also pose around just how bad the situation is. Insecurity is ticking very high, especially in the Northwest and the North Central. Kidnap rates are going very high. The kidnap for ransom industry continues to grow stronger and stronger in terms of the numbers. We have think tanks and policy organizations like SBM Intelligence already giving us dire numbers with regards to the strength and the growth of the kidnap for ransom industry. So when you look, every corner you look at it, at the insecurity of the economy, the situation is dire. The dollar right now, as I'm talking to you, according to some quarters, and I have very trusted quarters who are, who man some BDCs, for instance, the dollar is selling in the black market for about 1,585 naira. This is a situation that has continued to deteriorate. I remember when the dollar was about 700 and we thought it was really bad. It's now 1,585 naira. And it could continue to go. It will continue going worse because we have a dollar illiquidity problem. Just the puristic economic situation right now, everyone has to tell the truth. And the truth is that the situation is dire, both on the books and in real life on the streets. And you ask people, they tell you just how bad the situation is. So if the governors of the PDP forum are now finding their voice, well, I mean, it's a bit late, but you cannot blame them for finding their voice. That's what the opposition political parties should be able to do in an ideal political situation, and they're doing just that. And they're doing just that because the numbers back them in that sense. Things are really bad in Nigeria. All right.
I'm happy you ended on the politics. Let me go to you, member of the PDP with us, Prof. Ahmed Adamu. I don't expect you to disagree with your party governors, but what do you think about what they've said, that Nigeria is moving slowly to become like Venezuela? We all know what happened in Venezuela before Hugo Chavez died and after Hugo Chavez died. Over to you, Prof. Prof. Adamu, are you there?
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm with you. Yeah, things like this escalate to situation like what was experienced in countries like Venezuela, like Zimbabwe, Germany, and things like that. These are financial crises where the value of currency deteriorates to the extent that the local currency is no longer assuming its features as a money. Money must be largely acceptable by all and must be portable. But when money is losing quality, that kind of those features, so you realize that it's no longer portable and it's no longer accepted by all. And these are the symptoms we are experiencing in Nigeria. When Nigerians don't like their currency, if Nigerians don't like Naira, who else will like it? Who else will accept Naira? No anywhere in the world that Naira is accepted. It's only Nigeria. And now Nigerians are running away from the Naira. So anything that people run away from it, its value deteriorate. Because anytime Nigerians keep Naira in their pockets, it loses value. You rather buy things at expensive price today with the fear that if you delay the purchase today, when you come back tomorrow, it's going to be a higher price. So this is a situation of hyperinflation. And anytime you have money in your pocket, when inflation rises, the purchasing power of that money reduces. So you want to quickly get rid of the money at hand. So this Naira crisis is what we are seeing as a symptoms for what happened in those countries. And relating that to what PDP is doing, because we believe Nigeria is our country. And you can see that what happened in the AFCON, African Cup of Nations. We all love this country. Our BPs, we are high. We all love this country. We have to come together because we cannot sit back and say this country is in the hands of Tinubu or APC and say, we will not speak. So I like what the PDP governors have started doing right now, because if Nigeria is down, we are all down. So this is the only country we can be proud of. And governance is not party affair. Governance is everyone's affair. PDP is the most experienced party when it comes to leading this country in terms of fiscal and monetary policy. We've seen during the Atiku Abubakar and Obasanjo administration where they led this country, where this country had no single debt. They cleared all the debts in the country, and they put inflation below 10%. And Naira, compared to dollar, was very good, at a very good rate, around less than 100 or around 100. And so governance is everyone's business.
All right.
Especially when Naira is...
Okay, so you're also adding some more to the conversation that, when the PDP was in power, they managed the Nigerian economy better. I want to give the chance to the APC man in the house, Joseph Odey of the APC Youth. What's your take? I don't expect you to agree with what the PDP Governors Forum is saying, but what's your take on that, especially the comparison with Venezuela? All right, Joseph, I'd like you to check your Zoom to ensure that you are unmuted. If it's possible, you can detach your Bluetooth audio device and then speak to us directly because of maybe that may be an interference or interruption. But while we're waiting for Joseph Odey to be ready, Professor Adamu, the government has fired back, saying that your party's governors, or the governors who are members of your party, some of them have not even been able to pay the 30,000 naira minimum wage 4 years since it was signed into law. And this forms part of the problem we're having as far as the economy is concerned. So they're blaming them for the economic woes. What's your response to that?
You see, we have to rise above blaming one another. If you have your own problem, you should not deny it and point at someone else's problem. If the federal government has their own share of blame, they should accept it. As leaders, as a APC, as President Tinubu, they should accept the blame and responsibility, not accusing the PDP governors for not implementing the 30,000 naira minimum wage. And behold, the federal government is the superpower. Is holding all the powers, all the resources in its hand. So the state government, the subnationals, they are handicapped. So they're already weakened because they didn't have the ownership of the solid minerals, the natural resources in their land. There are certain limitations that they cannot implement. And I am not also saying that the governors are not also responsible, because I believe in the fight of poverty, it has to start from the local. The federal government cannot fight poverty. So it has to be the responsibility of the local governments. But those local governments, they have to be given the resources, they have to be given the power for us to expect much from them, because there's this saying that says, to whom much is given, much is expected. So there is so much concentration of power and resources at the center. And that's why at this emergency situation, we need to revisit how the Nigeria is governed and the political structure of the economy. And that's why PDP is the party that has the idea on how to better manage the structure. Because when you have so much power at the center, you're already weakening the state. You are weakening the local.
Well, you gave a quote that to whom much is given, much is expected. But also, I'll reply with another quote. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands.
I agree with you. But like I'm saying, the main point is look at the situation and take responsibility. Everyone should take their responsibility. And responsibility is also true action. And when we are repeating the same thing and expecting a different result, that's insanity. So for me, at this critical time, is opportunity for us to revisit the structure of Nigeria and change how it's governed. Let us have independent subnationals that have ownership of these resources. Let us have resource control, like Atiku Abubakar has been campaigning for. That resource control is where we can have empowered local administrations, empowered states administrations, so that...
Okay, so you're saying the reason why the PDP governors, some of them are not paying the 30,000 minimum wage is because we don't have resource control. I'll come back to you, Professor, very shortly. Joseph Odey, are you there? Let's hear from you.
Yes, I am. Well, I was going to mention earlier that at this point in our national discourse, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing with PDP or APC based on political differences. I believe that it's a point in our nation where we all have to figure out the way forward, considering the current economic state of the country. And both members of PDP, APC, and even other political parties would agree that we are all unified in the agreement that the economy of the country is not where it should be, and effort has to be made from all quarters and from all corners to take the economy further. So every Nigerian at this point is very right to say, let's find solution to the economic situation. Let's find solution to why the Naira is at 1,500. Let's find solutions to why insecurity is ravaging the country from north to south. And where I might disagree a bit with the PDP governors is that they made it sound like things are not being done to stabilize the country, to make things better. But it should be noted that President Bola Tinubu himself has mentioned at least several times, and when he addressed the country on two different occasions, the first time last year and even in his New Year address, he made it clear that he is aware of the situations of things in the country. He specifically mentioned aspects such as making the economy better, stopping food inflation through agricultural policies. He mentioned industrialization and all. He took responsibility for everything. If you go back to his New Year address, he made it clear that he understands that he is the commander-in-chief and he understands that it is his responsibility to make the country better. So on the part of PDP governors sounding or making it sound like the president has abdicated his responsibilities, I think it will only be fair if we keep opposition politics aside to acknowledge that the president has been very clear on the fact that the buck stops on his table and it is his responsibility to set the country on the path to progress. The president himself understands this, so we are clear on that part. And then on the part of Nigeria going the way of Venezuela, that might be a bit far-fetched. Yes, we know the economy is bad right now. Yes, we know we are trying to make things better. Nigerians are struggling as things are. But if you go the situation of Venezuela currently, where you have to carry money in a bag, like in a whole big bag to buy a loaf of bread, you would understand that we are nowhere near where they are and we are not going there. If you look at the indices currently, even as at last year, we're producing just about 1.3 million barrels of oil per day, which was one of the reasons why our FX and the Naira and all that has been going down. But as of December last year, we stepped up to 1.4 million barrels. And right now in February, through January, because the figures of February are not out yet, but in January, we've even gone up to 1.6 million barrels of oil production per day. So we know that, okay, our low production level is why our dollar has been going down, because we're not earning enough forex, as that's one of our major forex earners, and we're not actually getting the production numbers. But as we are doing that, as we are improving output and all, things will definitely get better. So on the point of the PDP governor saying the president has abdicated his responsibilities to the country, that might not be very true, because the president himself has mentioned during his live TV broadcast that he is aware of the issues we are having and he is tackling them.
All right,
While
all right.
we understand that
thank you very much. You said a lot. I just want to give Basil Abia a chance. Joseph Odey, I'll come back to you. Basil Abia, Mr. President is aware of what is going on and he's addressing them. What do you say to that?
And he has started addressing them, then maybe it's an alternate world, in an alternate reality that is happening, because right now, against the dollar, as with against other currencies, the Naira is in the free fall. Food inflation and headline inflation is skyrocketing. Things are generally bad. On the insecurity front, things are deteriorating. I cannot overemphasize just how bad things are. I think, again, as a researcher and a policy analyst, one of the things that I like to do most and best is to actually go out in the streets and talk to people, initiate conversations with them, and then you actually feel how visceral the deterioration of the situation in Nigeria is currently happening. So he's not done enough, I personally think. And then I do know, of course, that there's certain policy machinations that are now being engineered to arrest some of the situations. I think that those policy machinations are poorly thought out. An example, of course, is the
Basil, please hold the thought. I'm so sorry to
control.
interrupt you, but we'll have to go for it. I think the thesis of what you're saying is that the president, hearing what Joseph Odey is saying, the president is aware, and he's, you're saying he might be living in an alternate world. That's the president. But we'll come back from the break shortly. Please stay with us. And for those of you watching, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation, of course, with a look at the Nigerian economy, the PDP Governors Forum, which is a group of governors who belong to the opposition People's Democratic Party, having a meeting and bearing their minds on the state of the Nigerian economy, saying Nigeria is facing economic challenges that are comparable to what Venezuela faced. Our guest tonight, Joseph Odey, Director General of the United APC Youth, Professor Ahmed Adamu, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party. We also have Basil Abia, co-founder of Verif. Basil, I just want to come to you. And before I go back to the politicians, I don't know if you're a politician, maybe you are, but they say every human being is political anymore. Basil, is this comparison with Venezuela? We know what happened in Venezuela during the time of Hugo Chavez. And then after when he died with Nicolas Maduro. We all know what happened. Is this comparison right? I mean, they were queuing on the streets for milk, for bread, for sugar, They didn't have money in the bank. They were queuing for handouts. I mean, it was terrible. Is this comparison justified? Is it fair? Is it right? Basil.
Nigeria is 2 or 3 macroeconomic policy decisions away from having Nigerians queue on the line for essential commodities. And for Nigerians who know their history very well, and Nigerians who were alive during the times of General Muhammad Buhari in the 1980s, between 1983 and 1985, Nigerians used to queue in their numbers, in their hundreds and thousands, for essential commodities like sugar and wheat and many other things, and salt, of course, and rice. But the major reason for that was they had a food commodity board system and the framework where they decided to stipulate the pricing for scarce food supply. And what that does is, in pure economics, using the framework of demand and supply, when you stipulate prices against the market price that has been set, you create black market opportunities, you create the distortion in the markets with regards to supply, meeting demand, and third and most importantly, you start to have the commodity boards themselves deciding that we should ration these commodities so that everybody gets a certain amount. Now, I know that for a fact that the federal government are currently mulling over a decision to create a commodity board, sort of an arrangement where food prices are either stipulated or ensured to stay within a range. Now, I am saying that if we decide to institute that, whether we like it or not, demand and supply frameworks will come into 4 here. We're going to have black markets for essential commodities, and then that particular commodity board will announce another policy saying that we're going to start rationing these essential commodities. We have started seeing some state governments following that framework. I mean, Niger state government just announced last week that they're banning people from buying large commodities of certain large proportions of certain commodities. What that does is it's an indirect form of rationing, because again, the market is where people come, and with the higher value that they bring to the table, they're able to accrue as much scarce resources as possible. So pricing is a market signal using conventional macroeconomic principles in that sense. So if you start to put a distortionist price policy that is against what the market demand and supply framework is instituting, you're going to create these adverse effects. And these adverse effects can push up further inflation. And yes, the funny thing about inflation in the history of mankind, especially in the last 150 years, whenever you pass the 40% inflation threshold, what happens is a proper free fall. So we're at 33% food inflation, we're at 28% headline inflation. STARS and a number of policy think tanks as well as research organizations are already projecting. In fact, Verif Africa is also projected that we're going to hit 40% headline inflation by the end of this year. So the moment we hit that 40% headline inflation rate, then we're as much as becoming a mini Venezuela. And you know what happens when that free fall happens? nothing can control, not even monetary policy instruments can control that, because it just spikes. You wake up one morning, it's 50%. You wake up the next morning, it's 60, 70, 80. And when you have the situation where policy instruments can no longer control this free fall inflationary environment, you actually become a Venezuela.
Right.
So
Right.
we are
so you're saying we're a few percentage points away from that. All right. I want to go to the PDP man in the house, Prof. Adamu. If Nigeria truly compares to Venezuela's situation, what data and metrics, can justify this comparison? Prof. Adamu. Because Basil has said we're not yet there. So, but you're saying, and your party is saying we are there right now. So what data and what metrics justify this comparison? Okay, Prof. Adamu, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted. Can you check? Prof, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please go.
If I understood your question, for comparison, every average Nigerian knows the difference. You didn't have to go statistics. You didn't have to go to any data to understand the bad leadership of the APC-led administration at the center, especially led by President Tinubu. For me, it's a succession of poor decisions and bad governance from the last administration. We've seen how a lot of people become rich from Naira devaluation, from creating two windows where few people were enriched at the expense of the value of the currency. So this is a build-up from what happened in the Buhari administration, the excessive corruption, the mismanagement of the currency. And so these are the effects of that. And on top of that, President Tinubu built on by, without any plan, recklessly removing the petroleum subsidy without following the steps. And now we are seeing the inflation hovering around 30%, which is the worst inflation. Because when you look at the inflation during Jonathan administration, the PDP administration, was around 9%. So that was a statistic, that was a figure to compare with what we have now, headline inflation around 20%.
But Prof, I'm looking for, we're talking about the Venezuela situation, which is a very serious statement to make, where they didn't have food. There was no food, people were starving, they didn't have money, the banks were shut, people couldn't access their money, people could not even withdraw money from people, had to queue. So if your party is saying that we are right now in a situation like Venezuela, I want you to give us data, which you support. You're saying that's true. So if we are where Venezuela was, we're there right now, give us data and metrics to support this assumption. Or were your party's governors just speaking out of political convenience?
Yeah, okay, I understood the question. Okay, so you see, the beginning of everything is the currency. And we are seeing the value of Naira deteriorating every day, to the extent that even if you have 1 million Naira, in the future, which we are not hoping, but the way it's moving, if nothing is done, that could not mean any amount. Even if you have 1 million Naira, it'd be as just having 100 Naira. We don't pray for that. For example, when you look at when people got into power, it was the dollar was around 600, but now dollar is more than 1,500. So if you put the trends, you can see where it's going. It's going to go up to 2,000 or 3,000 if nothing is done. President Tinubu keep devaluing the naira over and over again. Now Nigerians, they have more dollars than the governments. There are more dollars in the hands of people than in the banking system. So what people are doing, they are starving the market. The market is shortages and scarcity of dollar and the abundance of naira. And we are not producing. And we import almost almost everything we consume in the country, petroleum product. Even with the Dangote refinery, people are anticipating that that's going to reduce our dollar demand. It will still not change anything significantly. So for me, when you look at the inflation, we're headed there because that 28% inflation is heading toward Venezuela.
Okay. So if you're saying it's headed towards Venezuela,
it's a journey to Venezuela.
Yeah, it means that maybe the governors were too hasty, to compare Nigeria's current situation with Venezuela. If you're saying we're headed there, we're not yet there, then maybe you're saying indirectly that your governors just spoke a bit too fast, or were a bit too fast in comparing Nigeria's current situation with that of Venezuela.
Yeah, some politicians, we exaggerate our statements sometimes. But what I'm saying is Nigerians, we should not give up. And that's what PDP governors are saying. We are willing to help. We are not here to criticize. We are here to offer solutions because we have the better brains. PDP, they have better people with better ideas. If you look at the history of the crop of leaders.
But what solutions are being offered? The governors didn't. I didn't see any solutions. Did you hear them announce or read out any solutions?
Yeah, you see, this is the first step. The PDP governors said they are now having their first meeting to design the opposition so that PDP will be the correct and proper opposition party, because opposition is not to criticize, it's to offer alternative ideas to the solution, because these problems are getting out of hands. So the PDP governors are now waking up. It's better late than never.
So were they asleep? Were they asleep before now?
Was there what?
Were they asleep before now? You're saying they're waking up.
Sorry, I'm not hearing that.
Okay, were they asleep? Were they before now? Because you said they're waking up. So
well, rising from losing the election last year and setting the cabinet at their states, for them to start looking up to see what's going on at national, they have to put their house in order. And there were a lot of by-elections, a lot of politics. So this is the beginning of the governance. And the party itself, we have issue with some leadership at certain levels. We have to keep the house in order before we start thinking about how are we going to correct and become the proper opposition party. So it's not like they've been asleep, but they're doing their primary job to keep the house in order.
All right. Thank you. I'll come back to you because you have to tell us how these PDP governors have fared in ensuring that they position their states to weather this storm. But let's go back to the APC man in the House, Joseph Odey. Your party, the federal government led by your party, instead of focusing on the problems at hand, is spending precious time blaming the PDP for the issues that Nigeria is facing today, saying that the party's governors have not paid the minimum wage and also that they are not performing well in their states. But a member of your party, Adams Oshomole, recently said Nigeria's current economic predicament was caused by the APC. Joseph.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Kofi. Thank you very much for that angle. Like I mentioned earlier in my past segment, President Tinubu is the head of this administration, and he himself, as a president, has not shied away from taking responsibility for the state of affairs in the country. He mentioned during his last address to the country that he recognizes that he is the president. And he mentioned also that Nigerians elected him to solve problems. President Tinubu has never passed the blame of Nigeria's situation to anybody. He mentioned specifically that Nigerians elected him to solve the problem of electricity. Nigerians elected him to solve the problem of infrastructure. Nigerians elected him to solve the problem of insecurity. He accepted responsibility for it all. And then also, in this present situation of our national discourse and the state of our economy presently, every true Nigerian who is sincere to himself believes that it is not the time to share blames. It is not the time to say, hey, you did this, you did that.
But Joseph, that's what it looks like that your party is doing, because they're blaming the PDP Governors Forum. I can read headlines to you. They're blaming in fact, one paper put it this way: federal government knocks PDP governors for failing as leaders. Another paper put it this way: FG This is what they said. Tinubu administration replies PDP governors, Nigeria's economy not troubled, unlike Venezuela. Another one, explain to Nigerians how you spend your allocation, PDP to president, a presidency to PDP governors. So it seems like they're passing the buck.
No, if you examine it beyond the headlines, which sometimes could be framed for attention grabbing, if I may use that term, you would agree with me that the party is not just passing the buck, and the administration itself is taking steps to make sure that it resolves things happening in the country. And that might bring me again to the previous point mentioned by Mr. Basil, where he mentioned that President Tinubu might be living in an alternate reality, if I may use this exact term. But that is not the case, because the president himself has shown that he is aware and in touch with the realities on ground. He is not disconnected. And you would agree with me on this aspect because, okay, recently we have had issues with the price increase of food items, which is making our country people to have a hard time purchasing food and considering the rapidly increasing food prices. And Mr. President said, okay, please, I have approved the release of 102,000 metric tons of grains from our strategic grain reserve. And it's not like saying, okay, this is the permanent solution. It's more like we're going to use that whole side while we are looking for permanent solutions to the whole food chain issue, to the whole food issue in the agricultural value chain, which will take a long time to solve. And then on the other aspects of administration, such as when we have to suspend the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs for the allegations of impropriety conduct in the running of the affairs of our office, and also.
Okay, Joseph, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Please stay with us, and for those of you watching at home, we will be back after this break. Welcome back. We're still continuing a conversation on the Nigerian economy following the meeting by the PDP Governors Forum, who claiming that Nigeria's economy is on the road to becoming like Venezuela, with economic hardships being faced by Nigeria, especially inflation, the exchange rate, and of course, food inflation in particular. Our guest tonight, Basil Abia, co-founder Veriv, Professor Ahmed Adamu, member of the People's Democratic Party, and Joseph Odey, who is the director of the United APCU. Joseph, before I go back to your counterparts, I was just going to ask you, since you were saying that, the government isn't passing the blame, the federal government actually claimed that the PDP states are managing their own economies in their respective states, and that is what is leading to the hardship we're facing in Nigeria today. So you tell me that the federal government isn't passing the buck, your party isn't passing the buck.
But like I mentioned at the start of this interview, Nigeria is at a point where every leader has to take responsibility for what is going on, be it APC, be it PDP, and all. And the governors themselves have specific responsibilities as well. So it is not out of place for the APC spokesman, the Minister of Information, to have said, okay, governors, you have your own part now. You should be doing this, you should be doing that. To put it more specifically, we have about 4 PDP states which are among the richest states in Nigeria today. There is Akwa Ibom, there is Rivers State, there is Bayelsa State, there is Delta State. They are all PDP states. We have thousands of kilometers of oil pipelines passing through the states. These oil pipelines can carry oil, which is where we gain our major forex income from, because we sell the oil in dollars and we get dollars to fund our economy. Now, what are these PDP governors doing to safeguard the oil pipelines in their state? I think recently, Tony Elumelu, as the chairman of Hess Holding and UBA, stated that we lost over 85% of the crude oil we trade in Nigeria. And this crude oil is passing through pipelines in these states governed by PDP, where they are usually stolen before we get just the remaining 15%. So what are these governors as the chief security officers of their states doing about the situation? Okay, that aside, recently when the government had released grains to states early last year, and even before last year when former President Buhari had released grains and other palliative materials to states, most of it didn't get to the right people because the governors didn't ensure that it got to the people it was supposed to get to. So there is a whole lot in the equation. And even in the recent statement by the Minister of Information, he asked the governors, okay, you're complaining about this, but even in your state, you are not paying the 30,000 naira, the 30,000 naira minimum wage, and you're talking about the higher salary scale for staff for workers. What's the assurance that okay, even the new minimum wage you're going to be able to pay it? But as far as I'm concerned, and I believe that as far as the body language of President Tinubu and from his statements and from his actions so far, we are going to agree that this is not the time for passing the blame and all, and it is the time for collective action by every leader in the country today to make sure we move the country forward. And APC itself is not passing the buck. And if the governors are going to come at the presidency and to come at APC, like you yourself mentioned earlier, they should come to equity with clean hands because, okay, they are not playing their part in the whole framework of the economic situation of the country as well. So it's not a passing the buck thing, but if anybody wants to pass the buck, it shouldn't be the governors because they are not playing their part as well, you see?
All right. I want to go back to Basil Abia. Basil, Nigeria is at a crossroads. The country's democracy has been tested and has been tested to remarkable lengths. This country can't progress without a viable opposition. Are you confident that the governors and indeed the People's Democratic Party as presently constituted is a formidable opposition to be able to keep the government on its toes and of course to serve as a check and a balance, which is very necessary in any democracy?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The opposition right now is very disjointed. The governors of the PDP, for instance, are doing a very terrible job, if I'm being honest. I've lived my life, I would say 70% of my life in Adamawa State, which is a PDP state, and it has been misgoverned for the entirety of the time I've spent there, and as well as the time that I'm now away from Adamawa State. That's just an example. I come from Akwa Ibom State, which is also another PDP state. That's another chronically misgoverned state by all of the statistics and the metrics available for what good governance should be. You know, we have a very high rate of, I would say, whatever metrics you want to use, a very high rate of misgovernance across all board, by the way. It's not only just in PDP states. APC states obviously are doing far worse. But with regards to the performance of the opposition, they are not a united front. There's a lot of infighting in PDP, obviously, that is, you know, leading to the particularly disjointed opposition situation that we have. Labour Party, for instance, also is very fraught in a number of allegations right now with regards misappropriation of funds, campaign funds, leading to, of course, the suspension of the treasurer. And there have been a lot of grave, I would say, fingers towards the current chairman of the Labour Party for a number of improprieties, being carried out. So, on the entire spectrum of the opposition in Nigeria right now, it's disjointed by a lot of infighting, a lot of terrible internal politics, a lot of corruption, and a lot of misgovernance. There is a shining light, of course. I would say the shining light for me also has to be from Labour Party. Which is coincidental because I've just disparaged them for their poor performance. But the Labour Party, the only state governor that has been produced by the Labour Party, that of Abia State, seems to be turning the tide with a lot of infrastructural.
All right. But still, hold the thought. The thesis of what you're saying is that the PDP right now is disjointed. I think that's the thesis. I want to go back to Prof. Adamu. Prof. Adamu, most of the governors from your party and the major stakeholders like Yenson Wike and Co, even IFISA, already, been singing the praises of Bola Tinubu. The PDP, some could argue, is dead, really. These governors are just putting up a front to seem to be doing something, but most of them have already had interaction with the president. I gave a list. In fact, the president is even directing some of them what to do in their states, with internal issues in their states and in the internal issues in the party. He's calling them party issue. Sit down. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. So maybe they're just wasting our time, really. Prof. Adamu, should we listen to these governors of the PDP?
You see, you don't judge PDP by what Wike, Fayose, and some of the leaders in the party are doing, because PDP is the voice of people. is the yearning, the aspirations
Prof.
of Nigerians.
Prof. Adamu, Duoye Diri was in Aso Rock celebrating with Bola Tinubu when he won at the Supreme Court, shaking hands and they were popping champagne and singing on your mandate. He was there. We all saw the videos. Simfu Bara was in Aso Rock to receive directives on the president what to do in his state and in his party. It's well aware. I can give you more names. Caleb Mutfwang, like I said, I've lost how many times, count of how many times he's gone to Aso Rock. The list goes on and on. Umoino, Basil's governor, he has visited the president at least twice, praising him to high heavens. Peter Mba, same thing. Let me not talk about Sheyi Makinde. So what are you saying, sir?
Well, these are politicians that want position, that want some relevance. For example, you've seen what Wike has been compensated for. He was someone that wanted to be president under PDP, and because he could not get it, and now he shifted his loyalty to get a position.
All right.
So if you have an idea on how to move the country, and you have the philosophy of a party, you should stick to that principle. It's not a bad idea if you can support the president through your opposition to your party. So a PDP is also supporting the administration with ideas.
Okay.
But we are not going to relent in criticizing them where they are wrong. Okay. So what I'm saying is those politicians are doing it for their own political interests. But PDP, when you think about PDP, do not think of Wike and Fauci.
All right, we have to go. We have to go. You've laid all the cards on the table. I want to thank you very much, Joseph Odey, Prof. Ahmed Adamu, and of course, Basil Abia. It's been a pleasure having you all tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good evening.
So
and that's the size of our package tonight on Politics HQ. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same station. I'm Kofi Bartels. Have a good night.